ready to join us. Is that right, you hear? Oh, there he is. There's Zach.
Let's go, baby.
Oh, there's a little lag there. This is
I'm ready
fun.
to join the boys. And, guys, you're absolutely right, Todd. You nailed it on the head. The Broncos have to make their decision on Russell Wilson before they do anything else, but they've made their decision on Russell Wilson. I mean, talking to Sean Payton and George Paton at the Combine today, they made it very clear. They are looking at quarterbacks in this draft, and it really feels like that is going to be the pick with their 12th pick in the first round is going to be a quarterback. And finding out which one it's going to be is the decision, because this decision on Russell Wilson has been made. They're just going through the steps of meeting with ownership next Tuesday and Wednesday to kind of square it away, finalize that decision. So if for some reason Russell Wilson's back, to me, that would mean because ownership said that they are not going to allow that. And I don't think that's going to be the case. I think they're going to do what Sean Payton wants to do, and that is moving on from Russell Wilson. It just hasn't been formally done, but for all intents and purposes, guys, they will move on from Russ.
What did they say that makes you so confident that they're going to draft a quarterback?
Well, that's what they're focusing on here. They meet with J.J. McCarthy tonight. Sean Payton was obviously asked a lot of questions about the quarterback position, but I also think Sean knows that in order to fix the quarterback position, you have to make that significant investment in the quarterback position. Going out and getting mid-tier free agents is not the way to do that. Using late-round draft picks, unless you get really lucky, is not the way to do that. He knows that in order to find that, you have to have a big investment in that position. Now, an interesting thing today, George Paton said there's 12 to 15 highly graded players in this draft class. Broncos sit at number 12, so kind of works out perfectly for them. And it also gives you a little indication that if the board falls, if their board lines up with the way the draft board falls, if they trade back, they'll only be able to trade back a couple of spots. They won't be able to go to like pick 25 and still get one of those guys unless one of them slips, but they'd be taking a big risk of losing one of their top guys if they move back too far.
So by big investment, do you mean like $250,000, $40 million a year type investment, or? Oh, okay, never mind. We'll move on. So just a quick question. Is J.J. McCarthy the first quarterback that they're going to meet with?
That's a good question. Don't know that. They did not meet with quarterbacks last night. At least Sean didn't. So I do believe that he would probably be one of the first. And obviously there's a lot of connections with the Broncos and J.J. McCarthy. An interesting thing Sean said today, he was asked about prototype quarterbacks and what size. And Sean said prototype in his mind starts around 6'2". But obviously Sean has proven in the past that he doesn't have to have a prototype type of quarterback. He said what he's looking for, seemingly the most important thing he's looking for in a quarterback is processing. And the speed of processing, that's the most important thing before the ball is snapped, while the ball is snapped, after. And that's the number one thing they're looking for. So I think arm strength is not that important to Sean Payton. He said accuracy is a very easy thing to determine because it's just on tape. So leadership and just how you process things are what they're really trying to evaluate here and throughout this draft process.
Did I see that he said, yeah, processing is most important, but also you don't really know if a guy can process based on what he did in college?
A little bit, yeah. And that's why it's tough. That's one of the toughest things because so many things in college can be catered to a quarterback, and the defenses aren't nearly as complex. So yeah, that's he said that's one of the most difficult things to determine, but that's the most important thing to determine in this process as well. But Sean, confidence has never been an issue with Sean, as we know. And one of the things he said today, which was really funny, was he said, we are going to be good at evaluating quarterbacks, and we're glad that a lot of teams aren't going to be good at that.
Wow.
I love that.
That's confident, yeah.
Confident as can be. Taking a break from Russell Wilson and the quarterback situation, did he talk about any of the free agents that we have coming up if we're like really trying to, bring some guys back, if we're going to let some guys walk and see how the open market fits them? Did he mention anybody's name in particular?
Yeah, he was asked about Lloyd Cushenberry. I believe it was actually George Paton asked about Lloyd Cushenberry. And they would like to have Lloyd Cushenberry back. I think he even said we'd love to have Lloyd back. He's a really good player hitting his peak. But they do really like the depth at center. And that's actually not just something that George said. That's a sense that I've got is the Broncos do really like their young depth. And they've got a couple of young guys there. So I expect that the Broncos are preparing for Lloyd to get a big deal with another team, and then they'll build their center position from within what they already have on the team right now, instead of paying 12, 10, 15 million dollars to make Lloyd the highest paid center in the NFL. My sense is that they're going to go in a different direction, let Lloyd get paid somewhere else, and then build from within at that center position.
Yeah,
Very interesting.
Yeah, you made a little face there when hearing about the young depth.
I just was wondering who they're referring to as far as like the young talented depth. Not saying that we don't have it. I just kind of want to know who those people are.
Yeah, I mean, seventh round pick on Alex Forsythe.
Yeah,
right.
I mean,
he's ready to go. I
him,
guess
it's him, or it's a sixth round pick on Luke Wattenberg 2 years ago. So that I believe that's the route that they're going to go at the center position, is young depth that they have on their roster already, and that's kind of the sense that I get at inside linebacker as well. I don't think the Broncos are going to be big spenders on their own free agents. Because we know the cap situation they're in. The Broncos feel very comfortable in the cap situation that they're in right now. They did feel like they have a little more flexibility with the cap increasing last week the way it did. But I don't see them using the money and the flexibility they have on their own free agents. Instead, I think it's going to be outside guys that they bring in. So that's my feeling right now, is Lloyd and Jeudy are both probably going to be gone.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm curious. You mentioned they said they have a little more flexibility with the salary cap. Is that all they said, or did they add anything more about having another $13 million to spend?
Yeah, pretty much just more flexibility. And they still maintain what they said last year, what they said after the season, that they're not going to be big spenders in free agency, specifically that first wave. They had the big splashes last year in free agency. They spent all the money last year, and that's going to be not the case this year. So don't expect them to be big spenders in the first couple days of free agency. They're more so going to be adding depth and plug and play or in certain pieces on the roster, but not major blockbuster signings in free agency.
Was there anything that surprised you from the press conference? Was there anything that you didn't expect to hear that you heard? Was there any like big flashes that surprised you?
You know, maybe the tone of the way George and Sean are talking about the quarterback situation. They're talking about it as if they have already made the public decision to move on from Russell Wilson. They say all of the things like, we haven't made the decision yet. That's going to come in the next 2 weeks. We actually have a time frame. That's maybe the biggest news that came out of this, is the time frame for a decision, likely definitely within the next 2 weeks. If not next week, we will know that the Broncos are officially moving on from Russell Wilson. Then the only thing that we'll need to know there after that is if they're taking the cap hit in year one, or if they're dividing it over the next 2 years. I really get the sense that they're going to divide it over the next 2 years to just have more flexibility. That was kind of a key word today. And then something George Paton said. He said no team has reached out to him about Russell Wilson. So not that we thought there was going to be a trade market for him, but there's no trade market for Russell Wilson. So it's not a decision of to keep him, to trade him, or to release him. It's a decision of whether to release him or whether to keep him on the team. And like I said, I think everything's pointing to that the Broncos will release Russell Wilson. And just the tone it's wild that he is a guy that is on the roster right now, yet they're so open to talk about what they're looking for in quarterbacks, how they're evaluating quarterbacks. Sean said it's vital that they get the quarterback position fixed. He keeps referring to this meme, and I'm sure he's going to continue to do it until they land their next quarterback. There's a picture out there, and I believe you can find it over at DNVR Sports on Instagram right now. But it's of a guy wearing a jersey, and it has the eight most recent Broncos quarterbacks' names on it, and they're all crossed out. And Sean said, I want to make sure that next name is not crossed out. Well, you can cross Russell Wilson's name out on that one now, because I really think that he's gone.
This one's kind of a shot in the dark, but I'm curious. I was really hoping somebody would ask about the Bill Parcells quarterback rules, just because, I mean, we know Sean Payton kind of comes from that tree, and that's been kind of the standard for how quarterbacks are judged coming out into a draft. But so much has changed. Did anybody bring that up?
No, not that specifically. But he did talk about that there's a lot of things that maintain the exact same, and there's some changes to the game. He said that one thing that actually hasn't changed is quarterbacks' feet have always been something that is a useful resource. He pointed to
Just ask
Joe
Rex Ryan.
Montana. He pointed to John Elway. But he did say, like, that Kansas City play 4th and 1 when the game was on the line in the Super Bowl. You probably don't see that 30 years ago, where Mahomes keeps it and runs with it on a crucial 4th down situation in a game. But pretty much, I mean, the Broncos aren't looking to reinvent the wheel when it comes to the quarterback position. And Sean thinks that he's a really good evaluator. And what's kind of crazy is he's never had to evaluate rookie quarterbacks and rely on a rookie quarterback. He drafted one when he was with the Saints, and that was Garrett Grayson. And that obviously didn't work out, but it was also a mid-round draft pick.
Did they talk about moving up for a quarterback, or was it just we're probably going to, make that move at 12?
Yeah, so George actually said it's pretty much impossible to move all the way up to number 1. And then when pressed about moving into the top 3 picks, he said, yeah, that would take a lot. You have to absolutely love a guy in order for that to happen. I know George doesn't want to give up all that draft capital in order to move from 12 to 1. But I could see a small jump happening from, like, let's say 12 to 8, 12 to 7, 12 to 9. And I think that's eventually, if I had to make my guess now, that's what happens is the Broncos trade a future second or a second and a third to move up a couple of spots to get J.J. McCarthy if he's still on the board, or one of those guys. I think they'll make a slight move up to get one of those guys, because the vibe today is, one, Russell Wilson's gone, and then the Broncos will use their first-round pick on a quarterback.
Yeah, there was a shady little report that came out this morning about how the Broncos could move up that we might get into later. But I think this is my last one. You mentioned potentially moving on from Jeudy. It looked like there was some sort of update on Drew Sanders as well?
Yeah, George Paton was pressed about what position Drew will play. And he's pretty confident that it's going to be at edge on the outside. But he said they really like his flexibility. But sometimes the flexibility can be a curse as well, because then coaches bounce the kid around and they can never get settled in. So I think they're going to settle Drew in on the outside. That's what it feels like, which then, leads the question, okay, well, what are you doing at inside linebacker if you do move on from Josey Jewell, which right now I do think that's the vibe, is they're not going to bring back Lloyd or Josey.
Well, I guess, it is what it is. But I feel like once again we're in a position where we have good players and we let them go for one reason or another. As we're trying to find more good players, it is what it is. But I'm glad that you got some insight for us so we can kind of keep our minds on the prize.
Yeah, and Todd, I think it was Sean, said today that inside linebacker is a hard position to evaluate. Maybe you should join his staff for the next few months in order to find that next inside linebacker in the draft for the team.
Hey, man, if I could do both and do DNVR, on the weekends, and then join the staff so I can get them boys right, let them boys know what inside linebacker is supposed to look like, I definitely would. But I love it here.
Let's go.
And one more thing, Marvin Mims got some love from Sean today. Sean said the only thing that held Marvin back from a receiver standpoint last year was us, meaning the coaches, the team, the scheme, maybe the quarterback play as well. He expects a big jump in Marvin's game this year. And one of the interesting things, another thing that he said held him back, was he plays the same position as Jerry Jeudy. So it makes you think, are they going to move on from Jerry in order to open a spot up for Marvin? Are they going to find a different spot for Marvin? But just keep that in the back of your head as this offseason goes along, because they definitely want to open up more opportunity for Marvin, and maybe that comes at the expense of Jerry Jeudy.
Interesting. I think that's all we got for you, unless you have any other scoops that you want to share.
Wait, how was last night? Did you have a good time? You went out? What was up?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to have a whole story for you guys tomorrow on the show. It was a much later night than expected. But, man, made for a great time.
That's
awesome. Glad to hear it. Well, thanks, Zach. We'll see you when you get back tomorrow. Let's see. What do we have next? Bet365 is next.
Travel safe, man.